following is a production of DallasCowboys.com and the Dallas Cowboys Football Club.
Let's go, baby!
Are you ready for a break?
Yes.
Are you ready for a break?
Absolutely.
Ready for a break?
Seriously.
It's time for The Lunch Break on DallasCowboys.com.
We were on a break!
With Nick Eatman, Brian Broaddus, Taylor Stern, and Derek Eagleton.
It's Wednesday, March 1st, 2017, Season 12, Episode number 131. Welcome to another edition of The Break. I am Derek Eagleton, joined by Nick Eatman, Taylor Stern. Brian Broaddus is out today. He is at the Combine in Indianapolis, and so he will not be joining us today. But we got lots to talk about today, and a lot of what we're going to talk about today originated out of the Combine. We'll talk a little bit about what Stephen Jones had to say yesterday. He did meet with the media, and there were several different topics that he discussed that I think are relevant for us to discuss on the show today. But before we get to that, our first main topic, our big topic today I want to talk about really is around the safeties. And once again, Nick Eatman writes just a fantastic article.
Nick, you've done it again.
And
if you want to catch Brian, he's on the draft show.
He is on the draft show. That is going to happen this afternoon at...
5 p.m. Central Time, I think.
Yeah,
5. Okay,
they do it every day. They did one yesterday.
They did not do one yesterday.
Oh,
but they will be doing one this afternoon in Indianapolis.
Dang it, St. Elmo's.
So make sure you guys check. They had some tornadoes out in Indianapolis last night, but they were all right. Supposedly, as I hear, Brian made them all run in the rain. He says he was toughening them up. We'll see how that goes. Anyway. Nick, you wrote a really great article yesterday about the safety position, and I'll let you kind of take it from here and talk about what the point of the article was, and then let's talk a little bit about it.
You know, obviously, Eric Berry is probably one of the best safety. He is the best safety in the NFL, and the Chiefs obviously think that way. But just, with Church coming into free agency, what is that going to do for him is really what I was trying to write about. Where is he? And I was surprised to see that he ranked 43rd last year in salaries. What that shows me is that the Cowboys won the deal. When he had a torn Achilles, they said, you know what, we're going to sign you to a 4-year deal. Do you want it or not? You have crutches. Your 40 time right now would be a 28.3. So do you want to take this deal or not? And I think he obviously did, and it worked out well for them. Now he's looking to make some money here. How much is the key, and where Barry's contract? I mean, it sets the market, it puts it up here, but what it does is it elevates, what the top 10 is. Like what is your top, the average of top 10, top 5 safeties, and obviously that moves it up there. I was looking in the range of 7 to 8 million. You got safeties there that did not make the Pro Bowl, have not made the Pro Bowl. I think he fits in there. And I think the Cowboys could be players in that depending on how they structure it.
So you do think, let's assume it's a 7.5 number, 7.5, 8. You do think the Cowboys could be and should be able to do a deal with Barry Church that would keep him here around that amount of money?
I think so. I mean, don't look at the cap and say they only have $6 million. How can they do that? No, it doesn't work like that. He's only going to count.
They work magic.
He's going to count $1.5 million or $2 million or something this year, even if his deal was averaging 8. I mean, that's just kind of the way it works. But I know this: when the Cowboys, they need to be careful with. He's going to test free agency. Go see what's out there. If you see something, let us know. No, it doesn't work like that. They never do that. I say never. I haven't heard of that. Now, they did re-sign a lot of players last year, but and maybe that stuff was happening, but you don't. It's not talked about a whole lot. When he goes in the door and talks to the Jaguars or the Raiders or whatever, he's not thinking, call Dallas and tell them. No,
That's not usually what's on their mind. And yeah, Nick's talking about this top 10. Now it puts Eric Berry at the top. Rightfully so. The guy beats cancer, and then he comes back and has one of the best years of his career, deserves to get paid. But now you're talking, he's higher now than Honey Badger, who's at 12.5, Harrison Smith, 10.3, Earl Thomas at 10, and Devin McCourty at 9. So, now there's that little bit of drop-off to kind of get down to the 7 where Barry Church could kind of fall. Is he elite?
He may be higher than that. I mean, maybe higher than the 7. It might be more in the 8 to 9. His agent's going to argue, in that range, probably closer to 10. But that's how you negotiate. I think he'll fall somewhere in that range. And I just don't feel like he's going to go somewhere else, but I should stop thinking that way.
Yeah,
and he really is preparing himself to go somewhere else.
And honestly, I think he's going to command more than that 7 or 8. I think personally, I think he's going to be somewhere closer to the 10. And the reason why I say that is because a lot of people believe, and I've read this around different people that kind of look at free agency and rank free agencies and rank free agents. A lot of people believe that Barry Church is the second guy on the list of potential free agents that was out there, with Eric Berry being number 1. He's already now signed. He's the highest paid safety. Obviously, Barry's not in that category. He's not going to make that kind of money. But I do think 10 kind of maybe he gets pushed up a little bit higher than he would be otherwise, because for a team that feels like they have to have a safety, he is one that has been a solid safety for a good amount of time. You find the right role for him, I think he may even be able to be better than he was here, because he's just getting smarter as he gets a little bit older, and he's not too old at this point. To me, this is kind of at that age where it's the right balance between experience and age. He's 29 years old. He has not had a whole bunch of injuries, so it's not like a guy that you feel like there's risk coming in the door with injuries. He's just right at that 30 threshold. And so you look at a guy like that, I think that's how you get a guy like Brandon Carr that ends up with a $50 million contract. He is one of the best in the class, and if you had others in the class that were better, that were in the free agent class, then maybe it drives him down a bit. But when he's what you got, and those are the options, then sometimes teams are willing to overpay because they need it.
Yeah. No, go ahead.
I've heard people, not Steven say this. Steven and Jerry would never say this, but I've heard people kind of that work some of the contracts say that they really need to be careful when giving a guy a third contract. Third contract is where they if they can stop doing 3 contracts for players, you can be a younger team and you're probably going to be more efficient.
Don't get so comfortable.
Yeah. So he's a little bit unique in that he was his first contract was a rookie deal, and then 3 years later, and he's hurt. They said he's a cornerstone type player. Let's keep him for a while. Let's get him on the cheap if he accepts this, and he did. Now you're talking about a third year. The guy that reminds me of him is Jay Ratliff, and only in contracts. What I'm talking about here. A low round.
They're on the opposite ends of the spectrum everywhere else. Yeah.
Well, neither one of them talked to the media, but for different reasons. Jay was a guy that was a 6th round or 7th round pick, and then they got him kind of on a sweetheart deal, like, hey, we think you're a good player. And then the 3rd year they gave him a big deal, and then the bottom kind of dropped off. Again, for different reasons, it's hard to compare, but that's the kind of thing that I'm talking about. You don't see a lot of players around here that got 3 contracts. I mean, Witten's one of them. Okay. Witten.
Yeah, Jason Witten's a little bit different. Yeah. You can't really compare him to
gonna have a gold jacket probably.
So you don't count when guys get when they renegotiate their deal, not renegotiate them, but just kind of restructure.
Yeah, I mean that
doesn't count.
That would be like Orlando Scandrick.
Not really.
Type stuff.
I'm talking about
like a deal, a new deal.
Yeah. The funny thing is, we're going through some of these free agents today, and a lot of them are young guys. That's this is a young team. The average age of this team is 26. So you're looking at a lot of young guys. Something that was interesting, that Steven talked about yesterday, because people are asking him, Lyle Collins, what's his deal? Where can he fit? Type thing. And now there's questions about Doug Free, because he's, next to Witten and them and LP, he's one of the older guys on the team. And then probably Brandon Carr, at 30. Yeah. So it's a young team.
I know that, Steven said a lot of things yesterday. One of them that David wrote a story about today about Lyle.
And really good.
And how it's an option, but they plan on keeping him at guard. I don't know anything about offensive line because I've never played it, but I just think he's a tackle.
Your son could.
Oh, yeah. My son will be a center. He already is snapping the ball, but I think he'll be – I think Lyle would be a tackle, a right tackle to me.
He did play in college, and he was obviously
he's just – that he was a rookie, and when he played guard, I don't feel like his body type is what they need at guard. They've got finesse, and I hate to say that word as a negative word, but I believe Martin and Frederick are finesse players.
Yeah, but I think what
Very good finesse players. Mark Stepnoski was that way, and he was one of the best ever. So don't take that as a slight. I'm saying at some point you need a fatty.
But we've seen Lyle Collins. We've seen moments of Lyle Collins being not a more of a strength player, more of a
guy.
Dominant, I'm going to run over you, maul you type player. We saw it in college. We saw it from his college tape, and we've seen moments of that in the NFL. I do personally think that maybe we're evaluating him a little soon because, like you said, that was his rookie year.
Sure.
I think that you give it more time, and obviously missed last year because of the injury, but I don't think of him as a finesse player. I think of Lyle Collins more as a physical, dominant type,
and you're not
smother you type player.
Okay, and you're not talking about the play where he's rolling out and there's a corner or safety that he just smacks 12 yards off the ball. I mean, that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about.
I'm specifically talking about that.
Move him.
Yes, and I think he's that kind of player as well.
Okay.
Like again, I think that when you come in and you play as a rookie, you're certainly not as strong as you're going to be by your third, fourth year in the NFL, because that's the whole point. They get you into an NFL program. They bulk you up. They get you stronger. You'll be able to play with that kind of leverage. But I just look at some of the plays, particularly, and it just sticks out to me, that play he had in college where basically blocks the defensive lineman, then kind of hits the linebacker and knocks him back into a secondary guy. I mean, it was just like he just kind of mowed through people.
He was fantastic.
And he's had some moments like that with the Cowboys where he literally blew people up. And so I don't think of him as a finesse player. I think he is a guy that really is more of a strength player, but we may have to see more of that as he gets a little bit older. But really doesn't matter, because if you did move him to tackle, you're still creating another problem for yourself, because I don't think the Cowboys are going to be able to resign Ron Leary. So wherever he goes, he leaves a hole in the other spot, assuming that at some point, Free is not here.
Yeah, because, obviously Stephen Jones wasn't giving any concrete things, it's just in speculation. Of course, these guys are getting older. They're considering retirement. They're figuring out their life plans. But a question here from Carlos says, what is plan A if Free does retire? I think that's kind of what you just answered, How much space would he free up, if any, in the cap?
Who?
Doug Free. If he leaves, do you now have more money to say kind of go after Ron Leary?
Well, who's playing tack? I mean, you're moving Collins.
Now we're moving Collins. Just hypothetical,
yeah.
hypothetical.
It's I wonder, because Collins, now this will be his third year. I mean, I know when they signed him, I'm sure Jerry said, "Hey, give us 3 years here, and then you're gonna get your money here." So I would imagine they will re-sign him after this third year, and he's gonna have to start making some money at some point. But yeah, you'll save a little bit with Free if they let him go. I still think they're gonna bring him back though.
Well, and obviously he would be the presumed starter in 2017. That would be on his own decision, which no one can decide but him.
Tough one. It was last year, just evaluating him was tough. There's times where he really struggled, and he was somewhat of a problem in the past in pass coverage. But then at times, it all kind of goes down to how healthy he was. I think when he was really banged up, he was missing a lot of practice time. He had some issues, but he's still a solid player and a solid right tackle. And with a guy like Dak, I know Tony used to always say, don't hold. He used to tell the right tackles, don't hold. Okay, I can see him. I mean, if he goes, I'll see him. I'll make him miss.
Right.
Please don't hold, because the ref will see that. And I think Dak could be the same way. So what I'm saying is that if you don't have a Pro Bowl right tackle, I think you can be okay.
Yeah, not only that, but I think
no one has a Pro Bowl right tackle, do they?
Well, somebody's got to go play right tackle at the Pro Bowl.
Yeah, at the Pro Bowl, but I'm just saying, does anybody have a Pro Bowl right tackle?
Yeah.
I don't know. But I think that, I will say this. If something happened where Doug Free were to walk away, and let's be clear, Stephen Jones was asked about that. He says right now they feel like they expect that Free is going to be back. So I don't want anybody that just came to the show to think that that's an announcement. It certainly is not. But if, let's say, for example, something did happen that way where Free were no longer on this team, right now, my personal belief is I think they still keep Lyle Collins at guard. I think they say, Chaz, it's time for you to show what you can do and pray that the guy stays healthy. Because I think what we saw from him at the beginning of last year when he had to play some, I think was, at least for me, I came away from that saying,
you were optimistic.
Maybe Chaz Green has a little something. Now, he has not been able to stay healthy. That's his issue. And so they'd be praying that he could stay healthy. But I think that would be the route they'd prefer to take, as opposed, at least listening to what Steven said yesterday about Lyle Collins. I think it's their preference to keep him at guard, and they'd move him to tackle only in a situation where they absolutely had to.
Yeah. And that's the same way it's been with Zach Martin.
Right.
Yeah, it's an option. We've never seen it other than practice.
Right.
Which they talked a lot about. Rob was tweeting about, what they're talking about with Zach Martin, that it's a number one priority for them to kind of make sure that he gets his contract straightened out and everything like that, which I think that's been really transparent this whole offseason.
Yeah, I think what you'll see there, depending, I know Romo's on the list of what we'll talk about, but, if something happens with Tony, let's say as a June 1 cut, where the money will get off the books in June, that's when you're going to really see something happen with Zach Martin. I'll bet any kind of money that we will be standing in Oxnard and they will have a deal with Zach Martin for a new contract.
Right.
So
that's usually how that thing goes. And
Frederick happened at last year. We were in L.A. The day right before the first game.
Yeah.
And
they were
Tyron
talking to their
Smith.
agent or something.
It might have been 2 years ago. I know Tyron Smith had happened at training camp as well.
And to their credit, I think they realized that their bread and butter of this team is made with the offensive line, and so that's their priority. And I think that's the way it should be. The priority should be making sure you keep this offensive line intact as long as you can. And when you start seeing cracks in it, seal that crack up quickly. What I mean by that is when there comes time when there's a contract like for Zach Martin, it's coming. Don't let it get to the point where he's a free agent. Get that done. Make sure he's taken care of before it gets to that point.
Well, you said, seal those cracks up. And so about Leary,
you just volleyed that for him.
I kind of did.
It's kind of been there.
You were like,
well, how much of a priority is it going to be? Is it going to be a really good priority, or is it going to be like the main priority?
Well, I'll say it like this. I don't think you can at any given time expect that you're going to have 5 high-paid offensive linemen. I don't even know if you could get to 4 high-paid offensive linemen. I think they're going to have to make a decision when it comes time for Lyle Collins. And they're going to have to say, hey, how do we feel about these other 3 guys? If we feel like we're still going to keep investing all this money in these other 3 guys, then we better draft well, right? We better be drafting guys that are able to – and I think they have to continue. This year, I think they got to go out, and I think in the draft, somewhere in the first 4 rounds, if I'm them, I'm getting either a guard or a tackle because I'm looking at the future, and I'm thinking I've built something. I've seen what Steven called the secret sauce. What was that, 2 years ago when he made that declaration? And I think it begins and ends with that offensive line. So I'm going to keep that thing going as long as I can. Yeah. So I'm going to keep investing in it to make sure that's always the strength of my team personally.
Tune into the draft show tonight because Brian will tell you that he does not like the offensive tackles in this draft.
Right,
He's like, we talked last week.
And maybe it's a guard. Maybe you have better. Maybe there are better options at guard. Yeah. Maybe that's where you need to go this year. But I think you keep investing in whatever your strength is so you can make it continue to be your strength.
Absolutely. And I think that's what they wanted to do. And other teams are blueprinting that now. But
all right, let's go ahead and before we get to our first break, I did want to introduce this conversation. Yesterday, Stephen Jones at the Combine was talking, and he talked a lot about the quarterback position in different ways. First mentioning that, answering a question about Tony Romo, saying that he is not, he doesn't think that the conversation has happened yet between Jerry and Tony. He does think, though, that that's something that's going to happen sooner rather than later. Obviously, free agency starts on the 9th of March. Which is just a week and a half away. So you'd expect that is going to happen pretty quickly. But it was the thing he said about Kellen Moore that I thought was most interesting. He talked about Kellen Moore, and here's the quote. He says, "We're very comfortable with him," talking about Kellen, "and what he brings to our QB room. Hopefully, we can get him re-signed." And to me, that kind of, as much as anything I've heard this offseason, that just kind of signaled to me they're definitely, if we didn't think they were before, which is questionable, they are definitely ready to move forward with the idea that Tony Romo will not be a part of the mix here. I don't think there's a scenario that he comes back. I think they look at it as Kellen Moore is the guy that we want to have as our backup. We have our starter. And there was even a question that came up later that suggested they wouldn't be against taking a late round pick and investing it in a quarterback as maybe a third guy that you can now groom to be a backup of the future. Is that how you guys read it, or would you say there's a different kind of take on this and you still think there are other things at play here?
Yeah. Well, nobody's ever won a game in the room, in the quarterback room. And so when he mentions the quarterback room, that's what I look at. Quarterback room. That's where he's valuable. he can help, and he has. He's helped with Dak. He's got good wits about him. Obviously, he's been able to do that. He's not the tallest. He's not the biggest. He's not the strongest. So he's been able to kind of get by with that, and that's what helps him in that quarterback room. I don't know if he that means that they want him to be the number 2. They could want him to be the number 3 who's inactive every week. Where's he going? Because all we know is that if it wasn't for the Cowboys and Scott Linehan, he may not even be an NFL quarterback. They were the only team that really put him on a roster. So I don't know. I mean, now, he's also thrown for 400 yards in a game, which only 6 other Cowboys have ever done. So he's kind of earned that a little bit. What I'm saying is I think he's a good person to have. If he has to be the number 2, you're probably going to lose that game, but maybe you can get by with it. But if he is your number 3 who's inactive, I think that would be ideal.
Yeah, that kind of bothers me about him. I think, obviously, I am no doctor, and Stephen Jones and Jerry Jones are privileged to much more knowledge than I am as far as his health. But, he went down with a broken ankle early in training camp. Obviously, we all know the Dak storyline from there. But I did not see Kellen Moore return to practice. He could have been doing his own things in his off time. He could be doing his own strength training, completely unaware of anything he's doing on his own. However, I did see Mark Sanchez and these other guys. Where is Kellen Moore now after his injury? That's kind of what I'm curious about as far as, can he still throw for 400 yards?
Yeah, I do think that if they were in a situation like 2 years ago where they needed somebody, I think Kellen Moore could have come back from the broken ankle.
I think you're right, yeah.
But the issue was you had a guy that was playing out of his mind, and you didn't want to put even Romo back in because he was playing so great. Then you had Romo back. And then Sanchez, his contract was guaranteed. Yeah. So at that point, there really was no room. So I think that's probably why we didn't see him. I think he could have been healthy enough to play. And maybe I shouldn't have said that about that. You'll probably lose with Kellen Moore. I think the weapons around him are better. Where they can do some things. But don't forget this, that just because you have Zeke and you have this line, you have to prove to teams that you can throw the football, that you can beat them with the arm. You have to. And I don't know if he can. I don't know if he's done that. I mean, he hasn't done that. He hasn't won a game, and now he threw the ball around pretty good against Washington, but that one game. But I don't think he's your backup quarterback. I really don't.
All right, let's take our first break. When we come back, I do want to talk also about Jalen Smith and what Stephen Jones had to say yesterday about Jalen Smith and what he looks like coming into this season. We'll do that when we come right back. Also, we want to take some calls, and we'll take questions on Twitter. You can call us at 888-855-2297, or you can hit us on Twitter at Cowboys Break. We'll take questions throughout the next segment and throughout the final segment. We'll be right back. This is DallasCowboys.com radio.
With unlimited data from AT&T, you can stream your favorite DirecTV content almost anywhere. Side effects may include sports-induced public celebration, increased desire to share spoilers, and repeated late-night use of the phrase,
just one more episode.
The unlimited effect. Get unlimited data when you switch to AT&T Wireless and have DirecTV.
After 22 gigabytes of data usage, AT&T may slow speeds. Must have eligible TV service. If you're not eligible, AT&T will move you to a new plan and overage charges may apply. Plan will include Stream Saver. Other restrictions apply. See store for plan details.
Hey, Cowboys fans. Did you know that over the next few years, more than 1 million service members will transition from military to civilian life? Veterans face unique challenges when they get out of the military, and Bank of America and the Dallas Cowboys are teaming up to help with financial education, career opportunities, and support of military nonprofits and organizations locally in North Texas and across the country. We're proud to support our troops and are deeply grateful for the dedication and sacrifice of our service members and veterans. Bank of America, official bank of the Dallas Cowboys, invites you to join us in our efforts to get involved by tagging game day photos on social media using #TroopThanks. That's #TroopThanks. And by learning more about our commitment to veterans at bankofamerica.com/military support. Together, we can thank our troops in ways that make a real difference.
Copyright 2016, Bank of America Corporation. I went to my first Cowboy football game at the Cotton Bowl when I was 10 years old. I've been a Cowboy fan ever since, in the Super Bowl years and the not-so-good ones. Teamwork is what makes winners. At the law office of Domingo Garcia, we play as a team to win your case. If you have been hurt in a car or truck accident, injured on the job, call the law office of Domingo Garcia and join our winning team. With offices in Dallas, Houston, Austin, Odessa, and Tyler, we can help you in Texas. Call 214-941-8300. 214-941-8300.
Back to the lunch break.
Welcome back. This is the second segment of the break, live from the SWBC Mortgage Studios at the Star. We are going to talk a little bit about Jalen Smith. Yesterday, Stephen Jones had a little bit of a comment on Jalen Smith that I thought was interesting. I'll read the comment for you guys and then we can talk about it. He says, our guys are convinced he can play in his current condition, and it should only improve as we go. The idea here being that really there hasn't been the kind of substantial change that I think anybody wanted to see. Like, he's still having to wear the brace. From what I can gather, it's not firing completely yet. But again, the positive side of that is Steven says that he feels as though he will be able to contribute next year, and they don't know to what extent, but they feel like he can contribute. And it looks like he's going to play. It's just a matter of how effective can he be if he is having to still wear the brace.
Yeah, I mean, that sounds like, hey, you're going to be able to play some special teams for us, and maybe you'll develop into a starter. And doesn't sound like he's going to be able, just from that comment. Now, I don't know. I know that he's making progress as they go here, but it just doesn't sound like he is going to be 100% cleared to go for OTAs. I mean, that we thought that might be the case, but that doesn't seem to be. But we're still 4 or 5 months from training camp.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, he'll get better by then, and we'll see. I think the real question is, what you probably have written down there, is what do you do at middle linebacker?
Right. I mean, that's the big key. Is you can say you think he's going to play, you can say you think he's going to contribute. You don't know how much, and you don't know how well. Mm-hmm. So now you're entering free agency. Draft is a month away, a little over a month, 2 months away. At this point, what do? If right now you have to make the decision whether you need to go out and get a free agent middle linebacker, or you need to invest a draft pick in a middle linebacker, what do?
Well, I just see what's there that helps my team. I mean, if I got somebody that can now. I don't want someone that's just that's all you do is you play middle linebacker, or you can't play at all. Like, I feel like the guy from the Vikings a couple years ago was that way, that they signed Jasper Brinkley. It was just like either you're this or nothing. You got to have some versatility. If you can find a guy that can do that, then why not? I mean, play him some at middle. Don't forget, Anthony Hitchens quietly is putting together. I mean, 3 years of he's had like 300 something tackles now in 3 years. I mean, he's putting 100 tackles together, gets around the football. He played a little bit better last year. So I think he could be your middle linebacker for you. You got Damian Wilson coming up. You got Nazacha coming up. I don't think you have to do anything, but I wouldn't turn my back on anything, especially because I've got Jalen Smith there. He is the wild card of all wild cards. If he comes out, great.
Yeah, I think Anthony Hitchens, my own personal prediction, will be like the Jack Crawford, James Hanna of this free agency. He will be a guy that I think this team will realize he's an extreme asset at a low price, a great team player guy that they will make an effort to bring.
Hitchens next year. Hitchens is
I thought he was a free agent.
Hitchens is next year. And he actually got his salary tripled. Because of the NFL rules on that, he was going to make 600 something thousand, and there's the rules in the NFL are if you are between the 3rd and the 7th round, and going into your last contract, if you've played 30%
last year
in the last year of your deal, all 3rd to 7th rounders, if you've played 30% of the snaps, you get a certain. I think it's like almost triple. So he's now making like 1.8 million in salary when he was it was like 600,000. That's what happened with Terrence Williams last year as well. Maybe Wilcox too. So 3rd to 7th rounders, guys that play, Anthony Brown will get that probably in a couple years if they don't.
Is this where Brian would be talking about Terrell McClain and talking about, Justin Durant and what's going to happen with him and those types of things?
What do you mean?
Like I don't know, Justin Durant, last year he was obviously considering retirement.
Oh, yeah.
Is he still going to be on that boat? And then what did the Cowboys do with free agency?
I think, as it turned out, and I don't mean this disrespectful to Durant, but I think as it turned out, I think Durant was a progress stopper for Nazacha. I mean, they thought, well, let's get him in here. We might really need him, and he was okay. But I think I would, they didn't go anywhere, and in fact, the critical play of the whole playoffs, it would have been nice for Durant to keep going and push Rodgers way out to the sideline, and that play never happens. We go to overtime. But whatever. Durant made some good plays. But what I'm saying is that I think I would have rather just preferred Nazacha to play all year,
Just because you just want him to get the experience.
But then Nazacha's like a Chaz Green guy, his health.
Yeah, and you're right. He got healthy enough to play. It was just at that point he was a scratch later in the year. I mean, I don't really mean that bad for Durant. I just meant you didn't get a ton of production from it, and now you still have the jury's out a little bit on Nazacha. But I think with Nazacha, Damian Wilson's coming on strong. We'll see what they do with Gatchkar. I mean, they might bring him back, but I probably wouldn't. I mean, I think, let's look what you got here. You've got Sean Lee, and you've got Nazacha, Hitchens, and Wilson. You got those four guys.
All under contract.
Wilbur is not a free agent.
No.
Wilbur they signed him to a 2-year deal, so you got him. And then, you're going to draft some, and I didn't put Jalen Smith in there. So you got Jalen Smith, and you draft someone. I'd get a younger Gatchkar probably in free agency. I'd get me a guy coming out of his 4th year and special teams type of guy. So I just don't think you have to go do anything. But I think if you do, I don't think anyone's going to say, like, what about Jalen Smith?
Yeah.
Just figure it out. Just don't get a guy that's just a middle linebacker only type player.
I get why fans are so excited and grasped onto anything that has to do with Jalen Smith. I mean, he was a second-round guy. You don't know how he's going to be. You know his college tape, but you don't know his professional tape. He keeps fans really up to date on social media, which can all be misconstrued. I mean, we all know that. You put up a photo of what is it in real life. So, and, I mean, like you're talking about, okay, Stephen Jones said something to me that we haven't heard before, that he can play with this brace.
Right.
I was under the assumption before, as long as he had the brace on, he wasn't playing. So now that Stephen said that, I think that opens up some doors to people who are like, this guy's just a natural athlete. I don't know how he'll be, but I know when I'm watching him, he's just a production guy. Right. So that's why I think fans are so excited. That's why I think Stephen and Jerry get all these questions about him, because it's kind of like, okay, well, what is he? Because as Nick just pointed out, he laid it all out for you. They're doing okay, actually, at middle linebacker. They're not like, that's not their biggest need immediately. But people just want to know, is Jalen Smith going to be Jalen Smith?
Well, the big thing, I think, is that this defense needs playmakers.
Yes.
And I think they've got a lot of and I think that was the thing about this defense last year. I think they were good. I think the last 2 years, this defense had parts of it that were good. I think the reputation of this defense was much worse than what they were on the field. Yeah, they had some deficiencies, but I think if you look around the NFL and you watch enough teams around the NFL, you would say the Cowboys had an average defense. And I think the thing that and the reason they had an average defense is because I think they got a ton of average players. That's not bad players. That's just players that are pretty good at what they do. They're solid guys. They're solid players, but they don't have enough of those guys that are making game-changing plays. That's the difference. And so that's where at least the hope, I think, for Cowboys fans is that Jalen Smith, at least based upon what he was in college, can be that type of catalytic player. And that's what everybody's hoping for, is that's what you can get out of him. And if you don't get that out of him, then you're back to square one of who's going to provide that for you. Are you going to draft that guy? Right. Where are you going to find that guy that makes plays for you on defense? Because right now your offense is humming. You need you need somebody on defense that can make those kinds of big plays too.
Yeah. All good stuff. Now, Thomas has a good question, because we're kind of talking about what they would do at middle linebacker. He says, who's the one guy in free agency, doesn't have to necessarily be a name, but maybe a position outside of the Cowboys you think could come in and make an impact? And then he puts in, parentheses, person or position. We're kind of talking that you don't have to I think maybe a young, cheap linebacker might be somebody that could come in and do something, but...
Yeah, I mean, I think... I just don't think that'll happen at linebacker, because I don't think you'll make a big splash in free agency because you've got Jalen Smith and you've got Anthony Hitchens. I mean, Hitchens is a good, solid player. He's not great, but I don't think he's worth a splash, especially when you've got this wild card that could be. I mean, that's why they drafted him. They drafted him so he could do that.
Yeah, but I don't think they're not going to splash in free agency at all. I don't
anybody.
Think. I
he echoed that again yesterday.
I think when it comes to free agency, they fill smaller roles and gaps with free agents. And that's why I think maybe they would do something at linebacker if they're replacing a role like a Gatchkar, if they're replacing a role like a Durant. I could see them going out in free agency and finding a veteran linebacker that they can bring in here on a 2 or 3 year deal that they think is a good player, not a great player, but he fills in some deficiencies you think might have for specific roles, and he gives you some insurance in the event you get an injury to another guy or Jalen Smith can't play. I just don't see them making a real splash. The biggest place I think they could possibly make a splash, or what would be equivalent to a splash, would be the wide receiver position. I could see them maybe going and getting a middle to upper tier type wide receiver, somebody that's kind of like what they did with the defensive tackle they signed this year from the Eagles, or last year they
Cedric
signed Thornton, a guy like that kind of is on the come. He's not going to be the top paid guy, but you'll pay him a significant amount of money, and he can come in and you're hoping that he's on the upstart of his career and he'll be better here than even he was at the spot before. Like, I could see that kind of situation maybe at wide receiver, because there's always a plethora of wide receivers out there, and so that could be an option. But I wouldn't be holding my breath for a big splash from the Cowboys in free agency.
Yeah, Rob wrote a really good article yesterday about, Steven said it again. I mean, they're always honest about what they like to do in free agency, and that's not to be the big spenders. They like to draft well and re-sign their own guys if they can. And I thought that's what they've said this whole time. And, if you're talking about draft, Brian would be on here too to tell you that the wide receivers in the draft are not the best.
Right, they're the greatest class.
Yeah, it's not the greatest class. It's not the Laquan Treadwells, even though he had one catch last year. But you get what I'm saying.
Yeah.
And so he'd probably say that's where you're going to get more of your buck. You know.
Let's get a phone call. We got a call from Jeremiah in Corrigan. Jeremiah, what's up?
I'm Dak P fan on Twitter. I've been hearing all over the internet that everybody wants us to either bring Church or J.J. Wilcox, and I talk on Twitter with some of the players, and I think it's time for Jeff Heath and Kayvon Frazier, because the way I see it, they come cheap. You've developed time into them. And as far as a special team guy, you can draft one of those, because Mike Wojcik is a magician in getting his special teams guys with, the tidbits that you get on the bottom of the roster. I just think that if you get Jeff Heath, you might have your next John Lynch. Just give me your take on it. Thank you.
Okay.
I think it's pretty optimistic. What do you think, Nick?
Yeah, I'm not.
That's nothing against, and that's nothing against Heath, I don't think, to say you're talking that he's going to be the next John Lynch. I mean, that's a pretty big leap for a guy that has to this point only been at times
Can he be
a
Harrison
decent
Smith?
player. Yeah, like
That's a pretty good player.
I think that's a pretty big jump for him to make that jump. But let's not get caught in the semantics. But what do you think about just the overall concept of using the safeties you have here and not feeling like you got to go do something in free agency? Or
I like some of that. He's saying let two go and move up two. That's a little bit too strong for me. I would probably want to keep one of the guys back, and I'm not going to count on both Heath and Frazier. I like Heath. I like his game. I've always thought he was good. He's had two bad games really, and it was against Jimmy Graham and Calvin Johnson, who have made a career of going over a lot of
making people have bad games. Yeah.
I'm not afraid to say I think if he wasn't white, I think more people would like him. I really do. I think that's the case at safety.
So what's the excuse for Wilcox? Because a lot of people don't like him too.
Well, because Wilcox misses a lot of tackles.
But I think they both have had moments that were high profile that people were like, that is why I think he's not a good player.
I think Wilcox has had a lot more time and a lot more plays where he struggled a lot. Heath has had a couple of games. The game that people talk about in Detroit, he actually played really well in the game. He made plays in that game. I mean, he knocked the ball from Reggie Bush. He fetched Calvin Johnson. Let's talk about that. I mean, on a play that was almost a 90-yard touchdown. He is a great athlete. And that's what I'm talking about. And when you talk about safeties, it takes people a long time to kind of get on board with that. With him, he'll be a good player if they decide to go that route. But I don't know if they wanted to take him away from the special teams part of it. He's one of the best special teams, and it's Rich Bisaccia, not Wojcik, as the special teams coach he was referring to. But Rich Bisaccia has said that he's one of the best special teams player he's ever had, and he felt that way since his rookie year. He's one of the smartest players. But, it's not just about special teams. We need you on the field. He showed in that Packers game he can be effective. I just wouldn't do both of those. I wouldn't say Wilcox and Church go. I'm going to bring one of them back.
But, the thing about it is I think bringing Wilcox back brings you, in my opinion, it brings you what you kind of already have.
Yeah.
Like if I'm going out and I'm going to keep one of these guys, I'm going after Church. If I'm not going after Church, then I'm accepting the fact, me personally, I'm saying, I'm accepting the fact that I'm going to go with my young guys. I might draft another guy.
Yeah.
I might go out and get another free agent. But I don't know that I necessarily want to get Wilcox absent Church because then I feel like I don't know who my starter is. I don't feel like I know who my starter is because I got a bunch of guys that play better around the line of scrimmage, and I don't feel great about anybody being back on the back end.
Well, I feel pretty good about Byron Jones being on the back end.
I think Byron Jones is better when he's playing around the line of scrimmage, personally.
That's kind of a problem. Because he's a corner, and
I get it. I'm saying though, I feel better. I think he is better when he's up on the tight end. I think he's better when he's playing up. I don't think he is. I haven't seen him be great when he's just in the middle of the back of the end of the defense. I don't think they have a guy like that as far as the safety position that is a real, true center field type safety.
Who is, just out of curiosity, so I can just kind of know like that type of player in the league right now? We're not talking about them coming here. I'm curious, like, who is that guy?
Earl Thomas was that.
Earl Thomas,
player.
yeah.
And he is that player. Yeah. We'll see if he comes back.
Yeah.
How he comes back from injury, I'm sure he will. He's that type of player.
There aren't a lot of them out there.
There aren't, yeah. There
aren't a whole bunch of them out there. But, again, and it doesn't mean that you necessarily have to have one in order to be successful.
It's just
all I'm saying is, they play a lot of single safety high. And when you're playing single safety high and you don't have a safety that's great back in the back end of the field, then kind of what's the point?
Yeah, well, it's only one play that I can think of, but I know he helped change a game against the Packers on 4th down when he made a nice play over the top on Randall Cobb, which is exactly the type of play that you want from a rangy safety like that can play all over the field. I think he did that a lot, actually, more than that. So I think him back there allows Church and even Wilcox to play better and play closer to the line of scrimmage. So I'd be okay with I'm okay with Jones back there, but if they don't re-sign Church, I think you need to address it. Probably in free agency, upgrade on Wilcox or draft someone.
All right, let's take our final break. When we come back, we'll get more questions. 888-855-2297 is the number. You can also hit us on Twitter at Cowboys Break. This is The Break.
To work this big land, you need equipment with values rooted as deep in Texas soil as you are. Like John Deere compact tractors with a 6-year powertrain warranty and big features that help you work less so you have more time to do what you love. John Deere was first in the Texas fields, and we're proud to be on the field as the official ag and turf equipment of the Dallas Cowboys. Find Texas-sized deals at myjohndeeredealer.com/football. Terms, conditions, exclusions, and warranty limitations apply. See dealer for details.
With unlimited data from AT&T, you can stream your favorite DirecTV content almost anywhere. Side effects may include sports-induced public celebration, increased desire to share spoilers, and repeated late-night use of the phrase,
just one more episode.
The unlimited effect. Get unlimited data when you switch to AT&T Wireless and have DirecTV.
After 22 gigabytes of data usage, AT&T may slow speeds. Must have eligible TV service. If you're not eligible, AT&T will move you to a new plan and overage charges may apply. Plan will include Stream Saver. Other restrictions apply. See store for plan details.
Star Sports Tours is the only official fan travel partner of the Dallas Cowboys, offering exclusive game weekend travel packages with sideline access and photo ops with current players, Cowboy legends, cheerleaders, and me, Brian Broaddus. Want to stay at the team hotel? With Star Sports Tours, you can. And our outstanding ticket selection is unmatched. You can trust the official travel partner of the Dallas Cowboys. And with us, you'll travel like a pro. Visit starsportstours.com to book your travel packages today.
Ice Cold Dr. Pepper and the Dallas Cowboys go way back. They belong together like Texas and football, silver and blue, shotgun formations and Hail Marys. Having a Cowboys football party without Dr. Pepper is like Thanksgiving without the Cowboys. Basically, we wouldn't recommend it. So, next time you have a tailgate, home gate, or whatever else kind of gate, grab some Ice Cold Dr. Pepper to make your Cowboys party one of a kind. Dr. Pepper, a Dallas Cowboys tradition.
Back to the lunch break.
Over the weekend, there was the 25-year reunion of the Super Bowl teams in the 90s. Got to see a lot of former players. It was great. And most of the guys were talking about just how great that team was, and the great plays. Daryl Johnston, Emmitt Smith talking about the lead draw. You just couldn't stop it. So I'm going to talk about a lead draw here in Tommy John underwear. I mean, you're talking about draws here. Tommy John's... I don't know what that is, but that doesn't need to be played again. Tommy John is the best pair of underwear you're ever going to wear. That's what it says here. I think I can agree to that, and you can agree. Taylor can probably agree as well. And if you don't think so, you'll get your money back. You can shop exclusive Cowboys underwear. It's the official draw of the team. Cowboys underwear at TommyJohn.com/Cowboys for 20% off your order. Make Tommy John your lead draw.
Thank you. That was inspiring.
Good job, Nick. Very good job.
You do it then.
No, I thought you did a great job.
You did a
made
great
me want to go out and buy
one.
some more.
Talking about that 25-year reunion, that was pretty awesome at the blue carpet, if you will. And just looking around and just seeing all these guys, coming by. And as Jerry said, they all look exactly the same. Now, some have put on a few pounds. Some lost a few pounds. But he's right. I mean, for the most part, it's not like, who's that? I mean,
Stepnoski there?
Okay, Stepnoski looks different than
very different.
Got Stepnoski.
Very, very,
I was
very
like,
different.
Not letting anyone in here. I mean, security. I'm like, oh, that's actually Stepnoski. He's lost a few pounds.
He's lost quite a few pounds.
They go one way or another.
They truly do. It's
and actually,
amazing.
he probably went the healthier way, right? Like, what you don't want is an offensive lineman finishing play and saying, I'm going to put on some weight. That's, like, not a good idea. He actually lost quite a bit of weight.
Well, let's not get into how and why.
It doesn't matter. He lost a lot of weight, and that's good, and it's always good when you lose
Leon Letts lost a lot of weight.
Yeah.
I mean, Russell Maryland was pretty big guy.
One way or the other.
Yeah. But
that was good. It sounded like it was a great event.
It really was, and Troy. I mean, Troy is Troy. Leading the way and brought those guys back together, and then they honored Jerry
in the
Hall
neat.
of Fame. It really was a special event there. So it's cool to see that.
Cool.
Yeah, and for little Tay What, if they need to lose weight, they can run their 40, and if they're in the combine. If you beat the 40 and you're wearing Adidas shoes, they're going to buy you a private island.
I already got one of those.
Really?
Wow.
If you what?
If you're like an Adidas kid, now, Dak is an Adidas guy. So when Dak went to the combine, he'd already signed his Adidas deal, well known that he was going to stay with them. Zeke was a Nike guy. Well, anybody who's deciding that I'm going to be an Adidas guy, if they run the 40 and beat David Johnson's time, and they're in Adidas shoes.
Chris Johnson.
Sorry,
Johnson.
why do I keep thinking David Johnson?
No, it's Chris Johnson.
Because that would be a lot easier to beat.
Yeah. What is he, 4'4"?
Yeah, David Johnson. I keep thinking
Chris Johnson
from the Cardinals.
4'2'4".
Yeah, super fast. He holds the 40 record right now. If you beat that, Adidas will buy you a private island. So, not only are you going to get an NFL
What I saw on Twitter,
career,
is this correct? That you get to choose between one of 4 islands. Like you can say, I kind of like this one. It's like situated in the right spot.
Yeah,
I like
it's
the blue water around this one. I'll take this.
really bizarre. Granted, I don't think they should get ahead of themselves because obviously no one has done that yet. But it could happen.
Well, the other part to this too is like, are they giving you some island that's out in the middle of nowhere that's so hard to get to that you never will go? It's undeveloped, so there's nothing there. There's no food.
Coney.
So all of a sudden you get this basically.
You
this
get an island.
Great, you got
It's
an
in
island.
Lake Louisville. It's like a really tiny island.
That's like those online websites where you can go and buy a star, right? Yeah, that's your own personal star. Just give us $100. It's now yours.
Well, and I just think it's funny too because these guys are at the combine. They're not at the Pro Bowl. Right. Now, if you're at the Pro Bowl and you're doing the Pro Bowl ESPN competition thing and they get something, those are veteran guys. They've experienced an offseason. These rookie guys are just trying to get an NFL career right now. The last thing they should be thinking about is, well, on top of being an NFL player, I also want to make sure I'm an island owner.
Well, if you beat Chris Johnson's 4.240, you're going to get drafted a lot higher than you're going to get drafted so high you could buy
your own island. Yeah,
I mean,
just give me the million.
I mean, think about it. If you're a receiver or running back, which is probably the two positions, maybe corner. I mean, you get drafted. You run a 4.24, 4.23. You're gonna be okay.
Yeah.
That's what happened with Chris Johnson. I mean, he was East Carolina running back. And
I just like that they have to give them incentives. Like, don't try to do it because it would be good for your career and everything. Do it because if you do it in Nike or Adidas shoes, you'll get an island.
That's not why they did it. They did it because of this.
Yeah.
Right. That's why.
Well, and then what happens if somebody's a Nike guy and he beats it? It's like, okay.
Well, I mean, it's
so Nike can then come back and say, "Hey, we'll give you something better than."
Well, it's like anything. I mean, you could sit there and the advertising and all that, and cool commercial by Adidas or Reebok. You gonna wear those? No, just give me the Nikes. So I mean,
just give me my Nikes,
and that's what they're trying to do.
All right, let's get back.
You have to do when you're third or fourth.
That was a good tell you what. Let's get back and get a few more questions before we end the show. 888-855-2297 is the number, or hit us on Twitter at Cowboys Break. Let's go to the phone lines, get a call from Tim in Boston. Tim, what up?
Hey, guys. Thanks for taking my call. I appreciate it. Hey,
Thank you.
Quick question about the draft. I called in a couple weeks back regarding some of the things that the Patriots do in the later part of the draft, how they'll trade out. Considering where we're going to be with our secondary, I mean, we have Claiborne, Carr, Wilcox, Barry Church. I mean, that could be devastating if we don't, like Nick said, sign some of these guys. But Brian Broaddus has also said that we have some depth in those positions. Don't you think it's better at this point to trade back and try to get more picks to try to address some of those issues? I mean, clearly Stephen wants to build through the draft. I understand that's a smart way to do it as opposed to go out in free agency and overspend. But, I mean, timing's everything. And just what we have on the potential loss side in the secondary and how we could address that if we're in the right position, I really think that's the way to go. I'll hang up and hear what you guys have to say. Thank you.
Thanks for the call. I don't think that they'll trade back too far. I don't think they'll trade out of the first round. I really don't. There's so much advantage to having a player on your team for 5 years and to have that fifth-year option. I don't really see the value of just picking up another. I mean, they've done well at times, and then in the mid rounds, it's a crapshoot. I mean, they haven't necessarily figured it out. They have a better team. Some of these guys are coming in and playing well, but they're still missing on some of these mid-round picks.
Yeah, and I think it was kind of what I said earlier about the types of players they have right now on defense. I don't want more bodies on this defense, and what I mean by that is I don't think this defense needs more solid players. I think this defense needs some big-time players, and the more you drop back in your picks, the less chance or less likely it is. It doesn't mean you can't find gems later in the draft. You absolutely can, but the more you drop back, the less that the percentages say you're going to find a more catalytic player. The higher you draft is where you will tend to find the better players. Yeah. So if you're needing more big-time players, if you're needing more game-changing type players on defense, I don't think the answer is moving back in order to get those. I'd much rather see them fill in those spots through free agency with short-term, low-money type deals. You can get the bodies with solid players, again, like your Durants. But if when you're drafting, I want to get the guy that's going to be a better player. So I'm always going to opt for taking that guy up higher.
Well, and
that's just my personal.
Yeah, me too. I mean, I look at it as a second and a fourth round pick. I'd actually trade up this year. I would trade up. I'd be willing to trade up because the way I look at it is you're getting another second and another fourth round pick that you didn't have last year. You didn't have Tapper and you didn't have Jalen Smith. And they were second and fourth rounders. Now, Jalen Smith could be the number 5, 6 overall best player if he can play at that level. So you're getting an extra second and an extra fourth. Don't forget that your fourth round pick is now your franchise quarterback. So you're kind of winning there. So if I could lose a 4th round pick and take my 28 and move up to 21, 22, something like that, I'll do that all day long because I think I can get a better player.
If you can get a much better player, yeah, I'm with you on that.
So I'm this particular year, he's not wrong in what he's thinking. It's just at 28, you're so backed up in the first round. Getting out of the first round is, to me, not so beneficial. And I thought you have great points there about you don't need more guys. You don't need more Damian Wilsons and Anthony Hitchens. You need more Jalen Smiths.
Right.
So go that way and go get one, and not have to try to get your 2nd round pick. How many 2nd rounders are we getting that are coming off of surgery? I mean, it happens a lot.
Yeah. Speaking of trading back and having the picks, Cowboys don't have any compensatory picks this year. That came out on Friday, I believe. Mm-hmm. You guys have a full article on where the draft order is now. Obviously, they did last year. They had 4, one being Dak Prescott from that compensatory picks.
What were there, like 10 or 11 third-round compensatory picks? I think it was something like that they gave away, not to the Cowboys, but just to teams around the league, which to me, the hard part about that I don't know if I haven't seen enough articles about is what that means now to everyone's 4th-round pick. Now your 4th-round pick is now, for the Cowboys, let's say, for example, you now are picking 10 spots behind or 11 spots behind where you were before. That's a significant amount when you're talking about players. You really are now being pushed from a 4th-round pick to really like an early 5th-round pick is what you really are getting as far as maybe value, right? So the compensatory picks are a big deal, even if you don't get them, just because they affect the value of all the rest of your picks.
Yeah, without a doubt. I mean, if you're sitting there with one of those top picks in the 4th round going into that 3rd day, you got to go through 10 more. And third round compensatory picks are not common, really.
Right.
So.
That was what was so interesting is that this year they gave away so many more. I want to say, and I don't know this for a fact, but I want to say that an article I read said that it was the most that they'd ever done, but there was certainly a lot. And whether it was the most or not, there was certainly a lot, as many as I've ever seen in the 3rd round. So.
Yeah, and then I'm trying to think, I know that the Giants got penalized late in the season for everything that went down in that December game. They got some of their draft order spots were pushed around, so I wonder how that affects all these other teams and other things we're not even thinking of.
Right.
Bizarre. Alan has a question, though, and he said, do you think Alshon Jeffrey not getting franchise tagged helps or hurts Terrence Williams' market value?
Slides him down a bit. I think Alshon Jefferson is probably Jeffrey is probably higher on the list of free agent rankings than would Terrence Williams because he's been a number 1 guy and been pretty good at it. Wouldn't you say?
Yeah, I don't think that affects him a whole lot. I think we're talking about 2 different positions, really. I think you're talking about a number 1 and you're talking about a guy that's going to try to go get number 2, number 2 money. Him not getting franchise tag probably, I guess it hurts him because it just moves up the money. I mean, I think when guys get franchise tag, it just kind of moves up everybody's money. So he probably would have rather him get franchised. I think that probably helps. That would have helped Terrence if he does get franchised because then he stays with Chicago. And then also it moves the money up a little bit. So I think it hurts him only for that reason, but not because somebody's going to be looking at Jeffrey and Terrence Williams.
Yeah, they're not weighing him together.
Yeah.
Well, you sure about that though?
I mean, honestly,
there still is teams that need wide receivers. They're still going to be looking at wide receiver options, right? And so it still does kind of affect them. And I'll even take it one step further. Like you start looking at all the wide receivers that are out there that will be out there on the market, it's going to be hard. And maybe that's what we ought to take next week or the week after to do. You start trying to rank these guys. How do you compare? If you're going to say those 2 guys are different, well, how do you compare a guy like a Deshaun Jackson? Because Deshaun Jackson, he's a different kind of receiver than those guys. He's still a wide receiver, and they're all going for wide receiver money, but he's a different type player. How do you rank Pierre Garçon? Again, different kind of player than those guys, but still going after that same wide receiver money. So it's going to be difficult to that's a position where it's kind of difficult to rank of, who's the top guy versus the bottom guy because it really is what's your flavor. What are you looking for? What kind of player are you looking for? And each of those players kind of have different things they bring to the table.
Yeah, I'm looking for speed.
Are you?
We know where you're going.
You have
right?
never mentioned that, Nicholas.
Speed.
It's just all the speed and nothing in between. They have to beat the 40.
Yeah.
These guys will.
I want guys that own an island. I want,
or will plan to own an island someday.
Right.
That should be your scout tape for the day.
Yep.
Yeah.
Give me some island.
There will be some guys out there, I presume, this year that are those kinds of players. But maybe that's what we'll do next week. Maybe we'll go through some of those and look at them and kind of rank them for ourselves. Like, how would you rank some of the projected free agents? Because that will be the interesting part about whether the Cowboys even have a shot of bringing Terrence Williams back. If he falls far enough down that list, now there's a chance that maybe there isn't a lot of money out there for him, and he says, hey, even if it's a little bit less, I feel comfortable where I am. I'd rather go back to the Cowboys and stay there rather than going somewhere else and having the unknown be a factor here, and I'm only making a little bit more money.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think Nick started that. We're kind of coming full circle with Barry Church being where he's ranking right now, just in this situational class.
Right.
So, yeah, let's do that next week. It will be fun.
We'll be back next week. Till then, for Nick Eatman and Taylor Stern, I'm Derek Eagleton. This has been The Break, live on DallasCowboys.com radio.
This has been a production of DallasCowboys.com and the Dallas Cowboys Football Club.
How about this, Cowboys?